Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this month's episode of Pegasus. I am Dr. Brittany Moore Henderson, Community Outreach Veterinarian here at Mississippi State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And joining me this month is Dr. Marc Seitz, Assistant Clinical Professor in the Department of Clinical Science here at Mississippi State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. Thank you for joining me today, Dr. Seitz.
Thank you for having me.
So Dr. Seitz, this year marks 10 years since you've been graduated from the school. Can you tell us a little bit about your previous work before returning as a part of faculty here?
I'd love to, and actually now that you mention it, it's kind of crazy to think 10 years has flown by already. I've talked with some of my classmates and it's only been a blink of an eye for us, and I feel like my career is just starting. But after graduation, my wife and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. She went to work for the CDC, and I started working as a general practice doctor. And I did that for about 3 years, but I was working emergency shifts on the side to make a little bit of extra money and just gain experience. And what I soon realized through the expert guidance of my wife is that emergency medicine was probably a better suit, a better fit for my personality. And so when we moved up to New Jersey about 6 or 7 years ago, so she could go to grad school, I took the opportunity to transition into full-time ER work and fell in love with it. And up there I worked for a pretty big emergency and referral hospital for about 5 years. While I was up there, I got a lot of other neat opportunities. For example, I started running an internship program, and that is sort of what helped foster a passion to bring me back to the university. It was leading that internship program that made me realize how much I really do love teaching. And I thought, well, where can I practice as a veterinarian but also get to teach? And that's when Dr. Mack and Nadine Hoblit called. And so fortunately, 2 years ago, I really did get my dream job, which was to come back here. And my hope and intent is to be here the rest of my career.
Oh, awesome. Well, I hope that you stay here with us, Dr. Seitz.
Thank you.
So what would you say has been the most rewarding part of being back here as a part of faculty?
I would say twofold for me. The first is I love being the mentor, or at least trying to be the mentor that I had when I was here. There are definitely those 3 to 5 people that I try to channel when I'm working with students. And I love that every day I get the opportunity to be a mentor to not only students, but young doctors as they further their training here. But the second thing I like, it's a little bit more non-tangible. Anybody who knows anything about Mississippi State knows we're famous for the people, you know, the family atmosphere. And one of the things I absolutely adore is being part of the Maroon and White Nation and being one of the small people that contributes to the family atmosphere that we're famous for.
Oh, okay, well, let's take a break right there and be back with more in just a moment.
Everyone remembers their favorite teddy bear, the reassuring love of their first puppy. They comforted us and made us laugh. For children battling abusive situations or post-traumatic stress disorder, the memories aren't as pleasant. That's why at Mississippi State University, we're pioneering a robotic technology that brings healing to those exposed to traumatic situations. Known as Therabot, MSU's robotic beagle includes lifelike features that allow it to move in ways that are both natural and nurturing. Its ultimate goal? To bridge the gap between 2 types of effective therapy, using real animals and their plush counterparts for emotional assistance. At MSU, we're proud to be changing the game in therapeutic recovery, even prouder to be putting lives back together again. A baby's arrival can be one of the most exciting times in a family's life. It can also be one of the most anxious, especially if the child's development is hindered by medical challenges that create more questions than answers. At Mississippi State University, we're groundbreakers in the study of CHARGE syndrome, a genetic condition that leads to a host of life-threatening birth defects. Our research teams are uncovering breakthroughs in treatment and prevention with a goal of greater understanding that leads to better care. We're also providing crucial support resources for parents and helping physicians around the globe gain awareness so symptoms can be detected and addressed earlier. By engaging in this innovative analysis and therapy, we're not only improving outcomes, we're unlocking brighter futures.
Welcome back, everyone. Still joining me is Dr. Marc Seitz, and today we're going to discuss some important tips on how to keep your four-legged companion safe from the summer heat. So, Dr. Seitz, what is heat stroke?
So heat stroke is actually kind of interesting. It's not a disease or an infection like a lot of things that affect our pets, but curiously, heat stroke is a condition where the body is damaged from merely an increase in temperature. It's different from a fever. With a fever, the body wants our bodies to be warm because it helps fight infection. But with heat stroke or hyperthermia, our body is forced to a higher temperature and it can be really, really damaging to cells. For example, our bodies are designed to be in this very narrow range, about 99 to 103. Merely going above that range by only 5 degrees for as little as 15 minutes can cause massive, massive organ damage or even death. So especially in the Mississippi summers, it's a serious, serious emergency we want our pet owners to be aware of.
Okay. So what are the causes of heat stroke in our four-legged companions?
So we can group all the causes into 3 main categories. The first is probably the easiest to understand, and that's an increased environmental temperature. And basically, the reason why this is a problem, dogs are a little bit less efficient at exchanging heat with the environment as we are as humans. If you think about it, they walk around in a fur coat, and their main means of getting rid of heat is by breathing. So as it gets hotter, it gets harder and harder to breathe off that heat. And so things like being in a parked car, which we're going to talk about more, or just being outside when it's 95 degrees and really humid can be really, really hard for them to cope with. The second main cause of heat stroke is anything that prevents them from getting rid of heat. So unfortunately, there are a couple medical conditions that make it hard for animals to breathe appropriately. We know it all too well here at the vet school with our bulldogs. Although we love them and they're a great mascot, some of them are not designed well to breathe off the heat the way they're supposed to. And then the third, although it's a little bit less common, animals are capable of overexertion. And so even if the temperature isn't that abnormal, I've seen animals run themselves into heat stroke. I'll never forget a 5K for pets and humans that I went to. And the winner, although the guy crossed with a winning time, his dog quickly collapsed from heat stroke because the dog didn't want to disappoint the owner. It just kept running until its temperature got up to 110. And fortunately, it was okay, but it could have been a very, very serious thing. So those are the 3 main ways that animals can get heat stroke.
Okay. Well, you kind of hinted at this earlier, but based on those causes, are there any risk factors for heat stroke?
Absolutely. So I like to divide all of our risk factors into those that are associated with the environment or those that are associated with the animal. I think it helps people remember them that way. The 2 main ones associated with the environment are parked cars. We want to avoid these because studies have shown that unfortunately the temperature can spike by 30 degrees in as little as 20 minutes. And unfortunately, things like shade and cracking the windows don't help that much. So they're really dangerous for pets in the summer. The other thing is just, unfortunately, here in Mississippi, the summers get way too hot. So not having access to shade or plenty of water is a huge risk factor as well. When we consider risk factors associated with the pets, they're all pretty logical, but they're worth naming. If your pet has excessively long fur, like a golden retriever, if it's got a short nose, like a bulldog, usually these are breeds that are a little bit less efficient exchanging heat. Obesity, unfortunately, is a big one. The fat acts as insulation, and it makes it harder to get rid of that heat. And then finally, there are some medical conditions. One that comes to mind is laryngeal paralysis in Labrador retrievers. As they get older, they just can't breathe off the heat as well. So these are the main risk factors that animals predispose them to getting heat stroke.
Okay, so what signs may we see if an animal is experiencing heat stroke?
I think the thing that makes it so difficult is initially the signs may not look that abnormal. They can start out with just an animal panting excessively or being just a little bit lethargic, and a lot of people write it off as the animal just being tired. As heat stroke progresses, it can lead to more systemic signs like vomiting and diarrhea. Then unfortunately, when it gets very severe, it causes problems with the brain, and we see this as a change in mentation. They can collapse, even go into a coma, and when it's bad enough, they can even have seizures. So it's always good to be on the lookout for those early and subtle signs and play it safe.
Okay, so if one of our viewers had an animal that they thought was experiencing heat stroke, what should they do?
Probably the most important thing to do initially is to get their animal out of the environment that's causing the heat stroke. So if they've unfortunately gone for a walk at the wrong time of the day, cut the walk short, get in some shade, take their pet inside if they can, and offer plenty of water. The second thing that is equally as important is to get that animal soaked in water to cool them down. Although fur is really good at trapping heat, once we wet that fur and even put a fan on them to help with evaporation, it becomes really good at getting rid of that heat. And some studies have shown that if pets are pre-cooled before they go into the vet and they're suffering heat stroke, they're a lot more likely to do well than if we don't pre-cool them. The third thing is to go ahead and go in and get checked out by your veterinarian. Even though it's always sometimes a pain to go into the vet, heat stroke is something that can cause silent damage over the next day or two if it goes undetected. And it's much better to go to your vet, get checked out, and have them assure you everything's okay than watch and wait, because sometimes the damage can be irreversible. And that's why really the only thing you want to avoid doing with heat stroke is to not go in. You always want to get checked out by your veterinarian if you think your pet has suffered from heat stroke.
Okay. Are there anything else that our clients should not do before with an animal that has heat stroke?
The only other thing that really comes to mind is to aggressively cool or try to do it all at home. As we mentioned, you want to soak your pet in room temperature water, but you don't want to use ice packs. You don't want to put them in an ice bath, because this can actually overcool them and hurt them as well. And then, like I said, the only other pitfall we see is people trying to watch and wait, and that's usually what leads to more damage.
So what recommendations can you provide to our clients to keep their animals cool this summer?
Absolutely. So there's a few simple things, and most of them are intuitive. But the biggest thing, kind of like us, you want to avoid the hottest part of the day. What that means is we want to walk before 10 a.m., walk after 7 p.m., and really we want to limit the time our pets spend outside between about 10 and 7. Although this does cut down on a little bit of fun, we've got great winters here in Mississippi, but these are the times pets are most at risk. Although I know a lot of dogs are housed outside, it's ideal to bring them in for the summer, but if families can't, then just make certain they have plenty of shade around and plenty of water. That's how pets keep themselves cool. If they're in the direct heat, they are defenseless. Some of the other things that we can do is just be aware of any risk factors our pets may have. So if our pet is overweight or a bulldog, we have to be especially cautious. And then finally, what we've kind of left is the biggest thing we want our pet owners to be aware of is avoid parked cars. It is definitely okay to travel with your pet if you're going from point A to point B, but you don't want to have any stops in the middle. Unfortunately, as we already mentioned, a parked car is just too good of a glass house. It gets really, really unsafe really fast, and cracking the windows as well as parking in shade does not help.
Well, thank you for sharing those important tips, Dr. Seitz.
You're welcome.
And this concludes this month's episode. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email me at brittany.henderson@msstate.edu. I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time here on Pegasus.